So this is a step-by-step guide on how I make my webcomic Bongo and Luna, link in the description. And it's a combination between traditional and digital art, and I'm going to go through every reason why I do what I do. Of course, if you have any suggestions or criticisms about the process, please comment down below. But first finish watching the video, alright? Once the video is over, you go ahead and put your criticisms in it. Here's my tools. 2 mechanical pencils, both Pentel Graph Cure 500, one 0.9mm, the other 0.5mm. Staedtler Mars Plastic Eraser. The following ink pens: Pigma Micron 005, 01, 02, 03, and the brush variety: Staedtler Pigment Liner 0.5, Jelly Roll 08 White Pen, Presto Jumbo Correction Pen, a regular school notebook, Bien Fang Mixed Media Art Pad 9 by 12 inches, Blick Studio Tracing Paper 9 by 12 inches. It's very important both the art pad and the tracing paper are around the same size. 4 binder clips, a 6-inch ruler, preferably not plastic, VT 12-inch touchscreen graphic pen tablet, a computer scanner, and a computer with Photoshop. Doesn't really matter what version, although I use version CS6. Step 1. Rough draft. I start by drafting out the comic in a notebook using the 0.9 mechanical pencil. I use the 0.9 for drafting because the lines are nice and big. It makes the sloppy drawing more clear, which is very important for the draft. I write at the top the date this comic will be posted, then I get started drafting it. I don't focus on details, I just focus on dialogue and who says what. And if there's a specific body gesture that I want, I make sure I get that in the draft. I don't write a script first because I actually have an easier time coming up with dialogue if I have a drawing attached to it. It must be from only reading comics growing up. So it's all about getting the general idea of what's going to happen. Details are for later. I also make 2 of these. One is the Tuesday's comic and the other is the Thursday comic. I always work on 2 comics at the same time because it helps me punt them out as soon as possible. Although if there's a certain storyline that's going to play out for several weeks, I try to rough draft all of them at once, but complete them throughout the week. I try to crank out these rough drafts as soon as possible, but I also take the time to reread it and edit it. When I finish, I move to drawing it in the art pad. Using the 0.5 mechanical pencil, I draw the comic using the rough draft as a guide. I use the 0.5 because it's good at getting the finer details of the comic. This is the stage where I focus more on all the bits and pieces I miss while drafting. But because of that, this part is actually the longest. And if you notice, I actually try to fit as many panels as I can into a page without getting too close to the edges. You'll understand why when we go to the next stage. Inking over tracing paper. I rip out a page of tracing paper and using the binder clips, I clip it onto the art pad over the page I plan to ink. I do this because the lines come out way cleaner when I scan it later. I have a whole stack of these tracing papers already inked over. I'm not sure what to do with them. Using the 0.5 Staedtler, I start by inking the word balloons and using 03 micron for inking sound effects. Then using the 02 micron to ink the bodies of the characters, or any items they are holding. I use the 005 micron for the smaller details like mouth or eyes, and if there are details that aren't that small, I use the 01 micron. Then once that's all finished, I use the 03 micron to ink over the character's outline. This makes the characters look bolder. It also helps with perspective. Characters in the background wouldn't get bolded, while characters that are closer to you will. If there's any scenes that are supposed to be scary, I use the brush micron to draw these lines of dread, as I call them. And if there's any inking mistakes, I use the jelly roll to correct it. And if there's a big inking mistake, I use the Presto. And finally, once every page is inked, I'll scan it. Before scanning any papers, I have a certain preset I always make sure to use. I scan it as a JPEG in black and white with 200 dpi resolution. It's set in black and white because it makes it easier to color later. And the 200 resolution is to create less of these tiny fragments that appear when I scanned it. If I raise up the resolution, more of them appear. I actually get a lot of these fragments when I ink right over the pencil, which is why I now ink over tracing paper. So I go ahead and scan each page, then organize them in their folders, labeled with what update they're supposed to be. And after that, we can open them in Photoshop. After that, I open them in Photoshop using the magic wand tool. I separate the black, which is the actual picture from the white, putting them all in one file and organizing them in proper order, resizing the canvas so they all fit. Then I merge them on the same layer. I make sure the blacks are completely black and then add a white background using the shape tool. I go about cleaning all the small specks and fragments that appear after scanning. This part is really tedious and annoying. If anyone has any advice on how to get rid of these specks and fragments, I'm all ears. I use the VT tablet to clean up all the specks. Once both comics are all cleaned up, I can go ahead and color. So I start by opening old Bongo Luna comic files so I can sample all the color. And using the paint bucket tool, I go ahead and fill in everything like a coloring book. Once all the characters are colored, I merge the color layer with the white background. Then using the magic wand tool, I select the 2 colors I want to shade by making that its own layer. I keep everything else above this layer and then I make a new layer in between both of them. This layer is going to be the one I used to shade in. I do it like this because when I shade it won't appear outside the lines. Also, I only pick 2 colors at a time because it's easier to keep track. This is when I use the tablet. Once everything is shaded, I merge them again in one layer and then use the magic wand tool to separate the white background into another layer. Using the circle shape tool, I create these colorful spheres that I add to the background. I use that to break up the white void that's behind the character. Then I merge it all back together. And that's all the actual art. Now it's time for getting it ready for WEBTOON. So I have a special Photoshop file called the WEBTOON converter, which I use to get all the images ready for WEBTOON. It has the images at its proper size of 800 by 1236, and it has also all the different Bongo Luna titles in it, along with my names, link, and the brush dissolve that I use to transition into flashbacks. If I want to use any of them, I just turn on the eye and bam! Okay, so then I open up the comic I want to convert, and using the lasso tool, I circle out what I want and I drag it over to the WEBTOON converter. I align the image properly and also resize it if it's too big. Then I save the file as a JPEG and put it in the folder where the comic belongs. Then I do it to the next panel until they're all done. I go to WEBTOON and add an episode. But before I upload the actual panels, I create the icon for that episode. Using the Snippy tool, I create an image of one of the girls' faces as an icon. I don't try to pick any face that's too spoilery. I upload all the panel and copy paste my description from a writing doc I have and check out the preview just to see if it reads well. I also do that to check for grammar mistakes. By the way, don't be scared to point out grammar mistakes. It helps me in the long run if you do, because I can actually fix them right there and then. You know, I'm trying to get better at this. Then I save the draft, and I actually can't get started on the next Bongo Luna comic until I make a Patreon version. So if you're a $2 tier patron on the Bongo Luna Patreon, you actually get to see the comic the moment it's done. But I can't upload all these panels to a Patreon post, so I have to use my own special Photoshop file called the Patreon Converter to do it. This is a file with a long canvas that fits all the panels in it. I open up all the panels I made from the WEBTOON converter, and I fit them all into the Patreon converter in its chronological order, of course. And if there's not enough space, I make the canvas larger, and if there's too much empty space, well, I shrink it down. Once that's all done, I save it as a JPEG and then I post them on Patreon. And now finally I do the whole process all over again. So I hope you enjoyed that little insight of how Bongo Luna is made. Of course, like I said in the beginning, you could add your criticisms and your suggestions down in the comments. I mean, you made it this far, you earned that right. And if I get enough criticism, I'll make a response video talking about what I tried and what has been effective. Until then, please like and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. Don't forget to read the comic on WEBTOON and TAPAS. And stay tuned, there's more videos coming soon to this channel, so subscribe to that shit. Ring that bell.